Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome to today's program Mitch Weseley, who is CEO and founder of 3G TMS, and Bill Knapp, who is former CEO and now general manager of Pacejet, a division of 3G TMS. And today we're going to talk about parcel shipping and TMS. Now, when it comes to transportation management systems, there's always something new to talk about. And that's because the technology continues to evolve and responds to changing customer demands and requirements. And one of the areas that's growing in demand for a lot of companies and growing in innovation for a lot of companies is parcel shipping, which was one of the driving forces behind 3G TMS's acquisition of Pacejet earlier this week. So what role is parcel shipping playing in transportation operations today? What are some of the challenges and opportunities? And how will customers continue to drive innovation in transportation management systems? Well, those are just some of the questions we're going to address in today's episode. And it's great to have Mitch and Bill on the program to share their insights and perspective on this topic. So Mitch, Bill, welcome to the program.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great to be here. Thanks a lot.
Great. So Mitch, I'll start with you. You and I have known each other for a long time. Obviously, you've been in the industry for a long time, going back to the beginning of TMS. And you've had the opportunity to work with, shippers and 3PLs and many companies over the years. So again, you've got this broad perspective. So based on your experience, I mean, how has parcel's role in the transportation operations of shippers and 3PLs changed over the past, let's say, over the past decade?
I think parcel's probably the fastest growing mode. I think it's clear that TMS really need to have parcel if they're going after most of the shipper market and certainly most of the managed trans 3PL market. We see a steadily increasing demand on that. We've always had, some level of parcel functionality in the system, and we have a handful of accounts that have used it. But we've also known that we with some regularity run into opportunities where there's a real need for parcel. And when I use the word real as in substantive, and those are really opportunities we had to walk away from. So, we knew that we had to come up with a good solution for this, and we've been thinking about that for a long time, and decided that finding the right partner was the way to go about it. And we have just because of this, we've had a lot better discussions with both existing accounts and new opportunities who have come in and said, parcel is really a need, and we really need to have a best-in-class solution. So, and I expect that to continue.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think, going back to when I started as an industry analyst, back in the late 90s and was doing my, first rounds of TMS, studies, parcel was, a blip in the, transportation spend and volumes of most, large companies, certainly for manufacturers. I mean, they were, LTL truckload was kind of the, where they spend most of their time. And, parcel was really, the area for spare parts shipping. It was really the area where there was a lot of office shipping, right? So shipping of documents and things of that nature. E-commerce, obviously, with the fast growth of e-commerce, that's having a huge impact not only for retailers, but obviously manufacturers have gotten involved with there as well, with drop shipping and manufacturers launching their own e-commerce operations. So now parcel is, becoming a more critical part of the transportation span, and being able to, have visibility to that and be able to manage that effectively. Now, this is an area, Bill, going to you, that many of Pacejet's customers are smaller, mid-sized, companies that ship a lot of parcel and less than truckload. I mean, what type of challenges do these companies face from a shipping standpoint? In other words, I mean, what drives them to implement the TMS?
That's a great question. There's a lot of dynamic change going on in the market right now in what we'd call the SMB, or small to medium-sized business. And that's really where our heartbeat has been at Pacejet. I'd say the first thing that I would bring to point is that businesses that are in growth areas are expanding. I'll give you a good example. We have a large national home exercise equipment customer, and what they're experiencing is a transition. They've been having working through their own warehouses, and that's how we were set up to work with them. Now, because of the expanded need to ship products in a quicker fashion, they now have leveraged third-party logistics firms. And the combination of this has put them into a difficult situation in terms of having visibility to both. We've solved the problem from a Pacejet product right now, but what it's requiring of them now is a TMS-like solution that can be more encompassing, provide them that staging for these different types of operations that a multi-carrier shipping solution that's mostly oriented around rating and booking shipping and tracking can't do as strongly. And the other thing about this is with this expansion, a real difficult time in having internal resources within their business to help them out with this. They're really looking for people like ourselves to solve these problems. And so we're getting drawn into more and more opportunities which look like a TMS opportunity more so than the multi-carrier shipping platform we've had. The other thing that I would say is there's just flat out changes in the marketplace. And I call that crossover businesses. And what I mean by that is we deal with retailers, we deal with wholesalers or distributors and manufacturers. Well, they're all, as you were pointing out with e-commerce and such, distributors are becoming more retailers. Distributors are moving more into manufacturing. And this has been going on, by the way, for, as long as I've been in the market, possibly a couple decades, but it's really ramping up, and it's now becoming not just this would be a good thing for us to do as a direction, it's a necessity, it's a mandate. And with that, they're experiencing a lot of pain around different modes of shipping, let alone in the parcel area. You talk about drop ships and third-party shipments, and of course all the e-commerce. But now, if I'm really expanding myself, I've got to be very, very cost conscious and thinking about the world in a different way around shipment consolidations. And now we get into multi-stop routing and pooling and things really that are best addressed through a TMS. So I would say in the past 2 years, we're seeing ourselves called into situations with more complexity, which says TMS is becoming more of a need down into our marketplace.
It's interesting, it sounds like, that there's forces coming from both directions, right? From the top down and from the smaller size market up as well. And, I know when I've talked historically to a lot of companies that haven't deployed a TMS or might have only been using kind of a shipping solution, in the past it was, well, our shipping operations are fairly, straightforward. We mostly do parcel or LTL, or on the higher end, it might be, we only do truckload, mm-hmm. Right? And now, I think you just, added another data point here, is the fact that companies of all sizes are really addressing complexity, have to address complexity in the transportation operations, where multiple modes are coming into play, and where the need for optimization, for more intelligent selection of modes, of carriers across modes, a smarter looking at rates across different modes, and things like, like you said, multi-stop shipments or pooling and so forth. I mean, those are all things that you might think, oh, those are things that just the large companies need. But I think one of the interesting things is over the past few years, as you just said, some of the smaller mid-sized companies are feeling those demands on them as well. Hence the need for more powerful or more broader TMS capabilities. So Mitch, coming back to you, kind of in light of what we just talked about, bringing these multiple modes together and kind of combining the best of both worlds, if you will. I mean, what new benefits or opportunities does having stronger parcel capabilities as part of a broader TMS enable for customers?
Well, I think it's a tiny bit more broad than that. Sort of taking what Bill said as well. I think the key really is that it's a combination of two things, and as you pointed out, Adrian, coming almost from both directions. So everybody today, not everybody, most people today need need flexibility. Most people in logistics are being pushed one way or another. So it's whether it's a managed trans 3PL or a shipper, more often than not, somebody who's shipping bigger stuff, more often than not, it's like, we have these needs, whether it's small parts, whether it's drop shipping, whether it's disintermediation. Parcel is becoming a more fundamental piece of their situation. And, we have probably the account that we have that has the largest average shipment size of all of our accounts, also does the most parcel. So think about that as a statement, how fundamentally that sort of begs the question that even someone who does a lot of crazy big bulk stuff also says, gee, I've got an awful lot of these little parcels, because in that case it's a lot of spare parts and specific replenishment. And the flip side is exactly what Bill said, and this is something that's been going on since the beginning of time. People say, I only need this. But then, oh, wait a minute, here's a situation where I need something else. And oh, here's a situation where I need something else. Because logistics is a business where the exception is the rule. And there always seems to be that exception. And more everybody's under pressure to handle that exception efficiently, effectively, and from a cost perspective, efficiently. So, you need to provide the quality service. Sometimes you've got issues with breakage and handling, so you got to do it right. And then sometimes you have issue of service. You got to get it there on time, and you got to do all that at the right price point. So I think, this has really been an issue since I've been in the industry in the early 80s. It's always there. I think it always will be there. I think it's there in a bigger way today than it's ever been because of the issues that we've been discussing. But, the challenge that we see really is that all of these modes have to be handled, and they have to be handled for companies of any size. They have to be handled for companies where the issues have different levels of complexity, because, in our business, the requirements are not only size oriented, but complexity oriented. And they've got to be handled the right way for the right situation. And so that's what really creates, I think, this, as you said, coming from both directions and the needing to bring the right tools to bear for the right opportunity.
I love how you said, logistics is about, managing the exceptions, and how there's always going to be, change in this industry, right? I mean, I think if you look back, what we're talking here about parcel, right? Who knows, if you're thinking forward ahead, there might be a time where, support for drone delivery, right? Or support to whatever, Hyperloop or whatever it might be in the horizon 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I mean, those are things that, might seem a little bit far out, but, ultimately if those things become a reality, you're going to see the need for a transportation management system to be able to handle these two new types of modes and incorporate that as part of the operations.
I've always said that between 80 and 90% of the code in a TMS deals with the stuff that doesn't happen the way you expect it to. All of the craziness. If all we had to do was code for things working the way we expected, we could write these things in a few months. So but if you think about it, it's as fundamental as when you go to a meeting and you get in the car and you don't really know exactly how long it's going to take to get there. And then you take that little bit of uncertainty and you apply that to hundreds or thousands of moves going on at any point in time all over the world, and with lots more complications related to moving freight than moving people. And you suddenly realize this is sort of a crazy business.
It is. And why, if you keep trying to do this with spreadsheets, your days are numbered. Bill, going back to you, I mean, one of the other things about a TMS, obviously, is that it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It really depends on a lot of data and integrations, with an ERP system, a WMS, in other systems, because it is part of, a broader end-to-end, logistics and fulfillment process. I mean, is this a challenge for, small and mid-sized companies, and kind of, is the integration process gotten any easier today than in the past?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that question, actually. The answer starting off is yes and no. Is it easier? Yes, the tools are much more sophisticated. I mean, the fact of integration and comprehensive capabilities and middleware that allows for that integration is more available. But with that, we've also are existing in a world where the speed of change, especially now that we're in the cloud, is forcing faster change upon us. Mitch also mentioned the whole concept of managing exceptions, so that it's not just a matter of plug and play anymore. We have to have tools that are going to allow for us to manage data transformation in a much better way, in a way at all for that matter, and not just the simple integration. And so it is easier from the standpoint of availability of tools, but the speed in which you have to act. And then it gets back to my earlier point about lack of internal resources and keeping up with the changes. And the other piece is in the market that in the SMB, in the middle market, there's a lot of different systems that link into the ERP systems. And so that connectivity requires a lot of expertise across platforms. So it's that knowledge of how to do this, not just that you have the tools readily available to you to do it. So I would say that it's providing there's more challenges now for integration than ever before, even though in many respects things are better than they ever have been.
No, that's some great insight there, because obviously, we've talked a lot from a technology side. We've seen the movement toward, EDI is still, a stronghold in the industry, but we've seen over time kind of movement toward APIs and web services, and developing, kind of standard integrations, if you will, with some of the leading ERPs and other systems, out there. But I think your point about, number one, managing data quality still remains a challenge, right? So that's something that you have to put some governance around, or some processes around, to make sure that, it's one thing to integrate, it's another thing to make sure that the data you're getting, or the data you're putting out is timely, accurate, complete, and so forth. And secondly is the pace of change, right? I mean, these networks are changing, so quickly, and the ability to integrate quickly with, a changing universe of trading partners out there, whether they're suppliers or customers or logistics service providers, carriers, you name it. I think that's the part that I think a lot of companies either don't have the internal expertise or know-how, or they're having a hard time, keeping up with. So this has been a great, conversation. So just as a way to wrap up, I mean, and Mitch, I'll start with you, and then Bill, you can add your thoughts as well. I mean, how will your customers continue to drive innovation in TMS? I mean, where are they taking you next?
So I think there's a number of places. I think, to me, the most exciting thing that's going on is really for the large logistics companies, for whom, a TMS is sort of what they do for a living, as opposed to the cost, managing the cost center of transportation that they wish would go away. And, there we're seeing really a big wave, a big sort of secular wave, saying that they've built a lot of different businesses, non-asset businesses. They have them, they sort of sprung up over time. Some they started, some they've gotten acquisitions, some they're trying to start. And this could include brokerage, could include managed transit, it could include e-commerce fulfillment and reverse logistics, and several other things. And I think what's really interesting is these guys are saying, okay, I got all this stuff. What am I going to do with it? How do I take them to the next level, and how do I rationalize the IT? Because, again, the IT is running their business. And so what's most exciting to me is that we're seeing a lot of these companies say, I need a partner, a software provider partner who can put all of these different disparate businesses on a single platform and run them from a single platform. And you know, the beauty of that is not only the appeal to the CIO saying, hey, I've got one vendor instead of N, but it's also the fact that as a customer goes from one relationship to another and another, it's all on the same platform, and all of their people are trained on that same platform. So that's something we're seeing a good bit of, really mid to large LSPs saying, what's next? And doing all that to really, again, create an offering to their customers that's different, to say, you know, yeah, I can handle your freight directly as a carrier, as a broker. I can do the managed trans. I can do other pieces of business you hadn't given me before, and really let them differentiate their offering. So I think that would be my number one area of excitement. And then the number two is really this idea that we do with Pacejet, where it's really that single platform that really says, you know, we can work with a company of any size and any level of complexity, and we can help them use logistics as an enabler of their business, of the right business processes and the right supply chain processes. You know, we never want to be in a position where somebody comes up with an idea to improve, you know, anything in supply chain execution. They say, gee, I can't do it because logistics doesn't allow me, transportation doesn't allow me to do it, my TMS doesn't allow me to do it. The whole point of a TMS is to allow people of any size and sophistication and complexity to do more, and to say, okay, what excites you guys to let you take your company to the next level? How do we enable that? How do we have a product that is you know, as easy as you can be to model whatever scenarios you throw at it and execute them, and do it in a way that's efficient and implementable. And as Bill said, you know, given the lack of resources, we can't afford to put, you know, armies of people on it for months and months. You know, I spoke to somebody at a fairly big company the other day who made a really interesting comment where, you know, their business changed so rapidly over a couple of years. You know, if you can't implement quickly, by the time you've implemented it, you know, you're already solving yesterday's problem. So, you know, it's that whole thing of fast implementations with that very sophisticated product to enable whatever comes next.
You know, that's a you know, a lot of great points there. I mean, I think one of the takeaways I got out of that is something that I'm seeing as well is, and I think it's one of the positive developments in the industry, certainly over the past decade, and I think it's been accelerated over the past 5 years, is that, you know, it used to be, again, 20 years ago, logistics was purely, and especially transportation, was purely a cost center, right? There was nothing strategic, you know, about it. Fast forward to today, certainly in the 3PL space, the LSP space, you're seeing them leverage technology as a competitive differentiator. You see press releases out there of, you know, 3PLs making acquisitions in the technology space, investing literally billions of dollars in technology, because that is becoming a key, you know, differentiator for them. And then on the shipper side, you know, they're competing on customer experience, and they recognize that logistics and especially transportation is a key component of, you know, driving an enhanced customer experience. So obviously you can call it the Amazon effect of what you will, but, you know, I think companies are finally recognizing that there's a direct link between transportation and customer experience, and not only the bottom line, but also top line growth and the ability to capture market share and all of that. So I think that's exciting. That's an exciting development, and, you know, bodes well for folks in the TMS industry. Bill, your final thoughts on what's driving, or what will drive innovation moving forward?
Right. Well, you've both covered some excellent points, and I'm smiling because there are a lot of the things that I think about. We're in a real transformative point. You know, the world of Amazon has really kind of rocked things to move in that direction. I think in terms of the mid-market and all the things we talked about in this conversation, that there is a need for TMS in smaller organizations that have less resources, less wherewithal. And how do we do that? And frankly, that's kind of what I would call the Northwest Passage, finding the way to get to that. in this world, I mean, I can come up with many examples of businesses. I need full truckload, or I need optimization, or I need one component. How do we deliver TMS? Not, in necessarily you have to now adopt all of these components of the TMS, but how do we deliver them in a way that will make it easily adapt to their business? And so, frankly, when I started talking with Mitch, as we started to come together and think about things, one of the most exciting, compelling things for me is really going to that point, figuring out and working together as now a consolidated organization, and figuring out how do we deliver this excellent capability to lower, smaller entities and make it very accessible to them. So that, to me, is the innovation that we're really going to be targeting and working on.
Great. Well, I think that brings us full circle. I mean, I think one of the things we said early on in the conversation was that, complexity is inherent not only for large companies, but also smaller companies as well. And, the rules for success moving forward are really merging together for both, large companies and small companies as well. Well, like I always say at the end of all our conversations, we always manage to scratch the surface on these topics, but we covered a lot of ground today, and you both provided some great insights and advice. So, Mitch, Bill, thank you both for making the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Great. I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the 3G TMS website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Mitch or Bill, you can post it there, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.